Welcome back to the Pursuit of Creativity. Today we are with Laura Goehrke. She is a spectacular, amazing artist in her own right, someone who's done improv. She's a producer in her day job. She's just an all-around cool person and is super connected, in my opinion, to so many things that inspire creativity. I'm so stoked to have her on the show, and this is the first time we've ever shot live in person. We're in the same room.
We're live.
We can we're not like
This is real.
This
No
is
screens.
real. No screens. So welcome to the show. Laura, how are you?
I feel so good. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the hype of the intro. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So great.
I'm so glad to have you here. We're gonna see how this goes.
Great.
I have conversations with people in real life all the time. I do not have conversations in real life with people all the time with 3 cameras in the room.
We love the angles.
Yeah, each one here is doing a little something. So
Yes.
hopefully it looks at least half decent. We'll see.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. So this whole season, I've kicked things off with kind of I won't say heavy question, but a question that takes some reflecting, I think, or can get to the core of what this podcast is about. And that question is, what does creativity mean to you?
It's a great question. Creativity to me makes me think of exploration. It makes me think of, whether you're exploring something on the page, if you're writing, or if you're exploring something on the stage, if you're performing, if you're exploring a different way to sing a song, or even if you're doing karaoke, different ways in. I just like that the vision of the idea of exploration. Maybe if you're doing something, trying to find a different angle of trying to do it a different way. I just like building, exploring. Those are the things that pop up when I think of creativity.
I love that. And exploring. So one thing a lot of people have said this season is it's a mindset. And I feel like what you're saying about exploration kind of fits neatly or next to that idea, because whenever you are making anything, to what I understand, there's usually a bit of experimentation, and you're kind of
Yes.
trying to figure things out. You're testing things. So
Yes.
Does that feel like it's in line with kind of what you're getting at?
Absolutely, yeah. It's I like what you said about testing. It's you're testing the waters. You're trying to see what works, what doesn't, and it's about just seeing what fits. And I also, with the idea of creativity, it's trying to find your being in flow and just the flow state and just being immersed. I think immersion is a big part of creativity. Is once you've hit that state of immersion, you are very present, and that's when the magic really happens. Is when you're present to the craft, and yeah, it's you kind of have to wade the waters to get there, but it's worth that effort to find that flow state.
Yeah. Oh, I love the word flow.
Yeah.
And I feel like that touches on such a cool thing that I've talked a lot about. I feel like we've talked a lot outside of the podcast about maybe not specifically flow, but things that intentionality and being fully in things.
Yes.
I feel is also important when it comes to creativity in general, and also just well-being as a whole, which is a fun segue into something we're just going to jump
dive
all
right
the
in.
way into the water,
Yes.
if you will. So one thing we talked about before we started the podcast, when I was asking you questions, was things that inspired you. And you mentioned that a commencement speech by David Foster Wallace in particular was very impactful for
Yes.
you. I watched it. It was really awesome. But for those who maybe have not seen it, could you just give us a summarization of what that was?
Yeah, so David Foster Wallace gave a commencement speech at Kenyon College in 2005, so 20 years ago. And I actually was in the audience for it because it was my oldest brother's graduation day. He went to Kenyon and graduated that year. So I was 16, and I remember even 20 years ago being this young teenager and having his words just really wash over me, and I could feel everyone in the audience that day was just locked in. So I would recommend for anyone who hasn't listened to or read the transcript of This Is Water to check it out. But David Foster Wallace in his speech talks about a lot of different things, but a big thing is about being intentional with choosing how to think and what are you putting attention towards in your life. Like he gave this example of if you are, you had a long day at work and you had to go grocery shopping and everything's overlit and you don't know what to shop for and it's been a long day. Like you can choose to feel miserable and just to be in the rat race of your everyday life, or you can choose to think about that situation in a different way. And like we were talking about, like giving people the benefit of the doubt and not thinking that everything is just like a miserable, like rat race experience. It's like about being intentional with how you choose to think.
There's another part that really stood out to me when I watched it was talking about like breaking out of the default setting.
Yes.
And this idea, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, like his idea about how there's, in reality, there's, I guess you could say in reality, there's almost nothing that doesn't prove that everything revolves around you. And that part, I was kind of like, whoa, okay, I guess that's true. Like everything you are experiencing from your first person perspective.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But to some people, there's no reason for you to not think that everything is from your perspective. And I loved how he then like flipped it and was like, you can choose, or rather maybe you should choose, or you have the ability to choose to think about other people and their experiences and understand that they are also, to put it in, I guess, more modern terms, the main character of their movie. And like they might be going through some stuff. And like he had the example of in traffic, like you could be mad, but maybe that person that just cut you off is driving their kid to the hospital.
Yes.
Right? Like there are these other ways that you can go about living your life and viewing the world. And I thought that was like really, really impactful.
Yes. I love, like, I just got goosebumps with that example of like if someone cuts you off, it's like reminding yourself, it's like you don't know other people's stories and you don't know what they're going through. And it's important to pay attention to how you're thinking about other people's stories and just giving weight to that. And to not always be like the way that we think about our lives, it's like we are the center of our lives because that's how we see the world. But it's important to give the benefit of the doubt to what other people are going through and to, be kind and to be compassionate for other people's stories.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, like the speech is called, is it This Is Water?
Yeah.
Could you speak to how that framing of the world, if you will, we're really out here, we're lofty right now, that framing of the world like affected you? Because I know you mentioned that like that part in particular, or at least that phrasing of things, like was really, really a big part for you.
Yeah. Again, David Foster Wallace, he says it so eloquently. I actually re-listened to it last night, and by the end of it, I was like, I had like tears in my eyes, and I was just like super emotional. But basically, he starts the speech off by telling this little parable about how these two young fish are swimming through the ocean, and this older fish comes through and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And then the fish swim away, and then one of the fish turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" And he basically says, in simple terms, that like sometimes something that's so ubiquitous and so present to be all around you is the hardest to acknowledge and to realize, like to be aware of. And so by the end of the speech, he just talks about how, having the power to think about the world around you is like having that simple awareness to, I don't know, he says it, can I pull it up? Just like the way he says it at the very end?
Absolutely.
I have that little section and I think it's like really well said. He says it has everything to do with simple awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water, this is water.
Wow. Well, first off, thank you for having that so quickly.
Yeah,
pulled up
I know. I was
phone.
reading through it earlier today. So
yeah, and I think hearing it again, I watched it a couple days ago, or listened to it a couple days ago, and what's so, it almost feels like it needs to be drilled. It sounds so simple, and it's also so complicated because. And I've had this conversation with people before. I'm curious if this is kind of what you were taking away from this messages. There's so many things in life that are understood as what's normal or understood as what's like just the way it is.
Yeah.
That his whole point is like, it is in your power, if you will, to question, think about, dissect, and then make your own assumptions about all the things that are really kind of ingrained in society. Does that feel right? Is that kind of like what you get from it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's really, he is questioning that default mode of thinking. And it's like, yeah, like pulling yourself out of what is ingrained within you in terms of how to think about the world, and like that you're just going through the world with your own perspective. And it's like kind of pulling you above that and making you see other perspectives of other people. And it just kind of shifts the way that you can think about a situation or about your life. But yeah, I mean, the way that he describes it all, it's just like he gives all these examples like we were talking about, and he really, like, by the end of it, it just makes you think about the world in a different way. And it's a really beautiful, he just says it so eloquently, and it's just like, it's really impactful.
Yeah, it feels very a matter of fact, but also encouraging the fact that it's not matter of fact.
Yeah.
It's like a little meta in that sense, where
Yeah.
he's like, I'm saying this to you, but really what I'm saying is I want to empower you to make your own mind up about things.
Yes.
You know, this is how I see it. And I think I'm giving you the tool, hopefully giving you the tools to then see it the way you have like determined to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is interesting. Two questions off of this topic. So after I watched it, I started watching End of the Tour. Have you seen that movie?
Oh yeah, that's like about him.
About
right?
him.
Yeah.
It's
I saw it like years ago.
Yeah, it's with Jason Segel and
Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg. Nice. I only got halfway through it because I was tired and went to bed. But that was actually the question, is if you've seen it, because I like immediately was like, I need to know more about this David Foster Wallace guy. Like this is really interesting. I knew he was an author. I've heard his name before, but I never had like dove deep into his thing. And on that note, have you read Infinite Jest?
I haven't read Infinite Jest. It is perhaps one day on like like a reading bucket list of mine. It's a little intimidating just because it's pretty massive. From what I
understand. Yeah, it's like over 1,000 pages,
right?
Yeah,
and it's like hefty. And I have, buddies who read it, and I remember just like for months they would just like bring it to work, and like you could see them like slowly working through it on the subway rides and everything. And but I have not read it yet.
Okay.
But yeah, so like my biggest connection to him is the speech that he gave.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe one day. And you said you haven't read it yet?
I haven't read it, no. I'd heard the name before.
Yeah.
And I was like when I saw it was 1,000 pages, I was like, well, I'll add it to the reading list, but I don't know
if I'll make it there. Yeah, exactly.
I'm more of a 300-400 page kind of guy myself, which I'm going to say is a great segue to maybe back up a little bit, and let's get a little bit of a background of like what you do. Who is Laura, the creative person? Like, give us a few sentence summarization, which I know is impossible to summarize someone's being, but like, what do you do for work? What is a couple places where you like practice creativity on a regular basis? Yeah.
So, for my day job, I'm a producer. I work at a design studio, in Brooklyn, and my whole career, I've been in production, working at various places. And so that's my day job, which definitely is, even though it's like in the production world, I definitely feel like there's creative outlets within my day to day, and I work with like super creative people, whether they're designers or editors or animators and things like that. And then outside of my day job, I have some creative outlets. Back in the day, for about a decade, I did improv comedy, which I think is like a huge part of my creative upbringing is being an improviser. like in my bones, and just learning about like leaning into the rules of improv and bringing that into my day-to-day life. I think that's like a big part of how I show up as a creative person. And then nowadays I co-produce and host a storytelling show called Public Victories.
Shout out Public Victories.
Shout out, you were on it. It was awesome. So yeah, we can talk more about that. And then I also, outside of my day job, I officiate weddings, which is a huge creative outlet for me because I write, the ceremonies from scratch and perform them, obviously on wedding days. And so that's like a big outlet. And then little hobbies like I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for like over a decade.
I don't think I knew that you played guitar. That's awesome.
It's fun little fact. I'm not like amazing at finger picking, but I can, play all the chords, and that is a special creative outlet for me when I need to like reset myself.
Very cool. Okay.
So there's a lot there.
There's a lot there,
Yeah.
which I love, which
Yeah.
is great. It lays kind of a path. So I want to go through each of those different parts, because it sounds like those are like different. It hits, you can let me know if this is accurate or not, but like I feel like it hits very specific beats in your life currently and in the past and things like that. But before I move on, a question I've asked a couple people is, do you think that it's necessary for people to have creative outlets in some way, shape, or form?
That's a really good question. That's so interesting because I think yes. I think it's very important to have outlets to release emotion or to tap into emotion, to just have a way to, like, as escapism, just from if you're stressed about what's going on in your life, you can fall into that flow state that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
I think it also depends on the person. I think some people are just much more analytical and maybe they just haven't yet tapped into their creative outlets because they're, that's not how their brain naturally operates.
Yeah.
But I do feel like everyone deserves to find those outlets, and maybe some people just haven't explored that yet, which goes back to like exploration. Like some people just may have not, the more analytical folks, like maybe just haven't given themselves an opportunity to explore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no, I tend to agree. And I mean, I think everyone can, could, and should, but there's, like everything, a lot of nuance to why maybe people don't, or maybe they don't think they can. But this whole show is about like everyone's creative.
Yeah.
There's ways that everyone can do it. So yeah, I'm interested to hear how people think about that one.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the improv thing, because I feel like that's like a super unique skill, a very unique creative outlet. And I know that you've spent some time in like a really cool, I'll say cool, I think a lot of people would agree, cool improv space. So could you tell me a little bit back about like, first off, what inspired you to get into improv? And then like, where did you like, what do they say, cut your teeth in improv?
Yeah. So let's go all the way back to, it must have been at the end of 2011. So this is quite a while ago. I was like in my early 20s, and I was living in DC at the time. And I went to Chicago to visit some friends, and a friend of mine and I saw an improv show at Second City. And I just was like, oh my God, I want to do this. Like, I just was immediately, and I had known about improv, like I'd heard about it, but I had never really seen like Second City is an improv school that is in Chicago and a couple other cities. And so they're just really well known for the craft. So when I saw that show, I just was like, I love what I'm seeing and I can see myself doing this. And I wanted to dive into classes. So when I got back to DC, I immediately signed up for an intro class because DC has a nice improv scene as well. And and then I fast forward, was taking classes, got really into it. And then I applied for an improv scholarship here in at the Pit, the People's Improv Theater.
Oh, that's the place I took a class last summer. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So you know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I applied for an improv scholarship after a couple years, and I had to like write a cover letter, and I had to cut together this like reel of my work of past performances that I had recorded, and I got the scholarship. So it was basically like 5 classes that you could take for free, which as like a mid-20s something like that's saving a lot of money for when you're making pennies. So I did improv for about like a decade, and it's just like the principles about like yes anding is like the big thing in improv is like if someone offers you a situation in a scene, you want to say yes to it and then add to it, instead of like shutting it down and be like, no, that's not real, or like this and that. Like it's all about accepting an offer and then running with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important lesson in life is like if you're on a call for work and someone's brainstorming, it's like you want to say yes, or it's like a bid for connection with a partner. You know, it's like leaning in, saying yes, and then like moving forward with it.
Yep.
And it's so much about improv is about teamwork and about being present, being in the moment, paying attention to the details, rolling with the punches, making your scene partners look really good. It's about like, volleying them up so they can spike it down. It's like all these lessons that when you're learning it on stage, it's applicable to real life as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I feel like there's so many like things that people do, whether it's like my mind immediately went to sports, for example, where, they always say like, you learn how to live when you're doing sports because you have a team and you're supporting each other and you don't want people to look back. And it sounds like the same exact things with improv. And I'm like, it's just cool to think that there's these almost like, what do they say? Like sneaking the broccoli into your meal or whatever, where you get these great life lessons while also doing something that's like inherently fun.
Yes.
And it sounds like improv is like clearly one of those things.
Yeah, exactly. Like to boil it down, it's just like a very fun, it was a very fun outlet, and it's a hugely creative outlet, and it lets your mind like play in such a fun way with the other people that you're on stage with. And then you're learning life lessons. And like, I love what you said about this, the sports metaphor as well. Like I played basketball my whole life. Definitely was in the athletic world, and I still play. And like, they're both like, whether you're on a basketball team or an improv team, like it's a team sport. And I think you can learn so much about life and about like navigating life through being on a team of whatever that may be.
Yeah. It's super interesting. And out of curiosity, because, what you do for work now and improv are not necessarily the same.
Yeah.
I had someone on the podcast that was talking about like the importance of like having a life outside of work. So do you find that like improv and like other things you do kind of give you that other identity where people like don't know Laura, the producer, but you're like Laura, just Laura, does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you mean like outside of my work, what are like the different shades of me, like
Yes.
outside of my day job?
Yeah. It sounds like improv was that for a good while, right? So like currently are there other shades of you that like maybe they're like, oh, Laura does that for work? I know her as Laura this, what I'm saying? Not that everything needs to be like described in that way, but yeah.
So after I basically stopped doing improv once the pandemic hit, and then just because it was challenging to be on, like, everyone's on Zoom, and like it just was it was just like a natural break for me. And then I built up the show Public Victories, and like that is a huge outlet for me right now in terms of like the monthly show that we put on, and like that's like a big outlet for me. Writing ceremonies, like I think for weddings, like I think that there's like different outlets that I have that are outside of work that I can lean into my creativity a bit more, and that because I feel like everyone does have different shades of themselves, or like different like versions of themselves. Obviously, the key is to try to find your authentic self in every single situation that you're in.
Yeah.
But, your work self might be different than like yourself with your friends or with your family. Like we all have different shades of who we are. And as you get to know someone, you get to learn those different shades of them like over time. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always fun for me. Like even in this interview, you were like, and I play guitar. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So it's cool to, I guess, know, like you just said, I 100% agree. Like to know people, then you get to learn more about, to put it in like game terms, their lore. They're
Yeah.
like the stuff that they have like in their back pocket that hasn't necessarily come out like immediately.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's really cool. Let's stay on public victories
Yes.
for a little bit, because
Let's
I
do
think
it.
there's a lot of really cool things in there that people might find. I find interesting, so I'm hoping people also find
Yeah.
it interesting. So could you just break down kind of like the format of it?
Yes.
Just so people who haven't heard of it yet, and then also kind of what was, I know we've talked about this before, but like what was the thing that like made you want to bring it into real life?
Yeah, so Public Victories is a monthly live storytelling show that happens in Brooklyn, New York, in Park Slope. And the format is that myself and my two co-producers, Mary Alice and Andrea, we book 4 performers per show. And each of those performers tell a up to 8-minute story about a personal triumph in their life. So it's a true story about a victory. And then we also, every show, in the moment, we ask if any audience members want to come up and tell a victory, like a mini victory. And that to me is one of the most powerful parts of the show, because it's such a warm environment. Like it's such a safe environment, and the community is really special in terms of the folks who show up for the show, in that we've been doing the show for almost 3 years, and we've never not had an audience member come up in the moment and share a story.
Yeah.
And that's like takes a lot of guts to go to a show not being expected to get up on stage, but then all of a sudden you're raising your hand and you're volunteering yourself to tell a victory in the moment with no prep. It's really amazing. And there's been some really powerful stories that have come out of the audience shares. And then we also have a component of the show where it's a free show, but we raise money at the end through donations, and we partner with local nonprofits in New York City that we donate to. We also raise money through donations to help pay their performers, because we feel that performers should get paid for the work that they do. So that's really meaningful, in my opinion, just to give back to the community and give back to the performers. I got into it because my friend Mary Alice came up with the idea years ago, right before the pandemic, and I had known her through the improv community, and she asked me, she's like, hey, I have this idea about storytelling, about victories. Like, are you interested? I'd love to talk more about it. And I just really respected her as a performer and as a person, and I loved the idea of producing a show.
Yeah.
And being involved in like the production behind something, and to create something from the ground up and to build something from the ground up was really intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're 3 years in, and it's really exciting.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little biased because I did a public victory this past was it December?
Yeah,
right?
December.
We
Yeah.
did it. We both
We're both
spoke,
performing, yeah.
which was awesome. And there's a lot of things in what you just said that I want to touch on really quick. And one thing that's come up a lot over the course of this season is like the idea of creating for yourself versus creating for like a job or like getting paid for it or whatever. So I'm curious, was there a part of you that was like, oh, this is something that I can own in a sense, like I want to lean into that, and then also all the other good things. Like, talk me through kind of that thought process, because you said like this is something I could produce, like be behind the scenes. Like,
Yes.
Was that part of your decision in like getting involved?
Yeah. I love what you said about the idea about like ownership. I think to me, what's really exciting or what's special about producing is being on a team of 3 producers, and we call ourselves the tripod, because there's 3 of
Great
us,
name.
which we love. And it's really cool to bounce ideas off of other people. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like a collaborative process when you're being creative. It's like working with others and building something up with other people and coming up with ideas. And yeah, just like owning every detail of a show. And it's something really unique because I had been performing for so long, and it's nice to be, it's been really cool to be on the producing side of that, and to help create a show and to create a community that people are really drawn to.
Yeah.
It's really fulfilling. And we get a lot of great feedback from the folks who come to our show, and they're like, wow, I've never like, and it's always on a Sunday night. So it's like kind of helps push away. Like we have a show tonight, and it like helps push away the Sunday scaries because it's just like a feel good show, and you're really present to what the stories are. And it's, we just get a lot of positive feedback, and that makes me want to keep going for however long, it's a really great, feeling to be able to create something for those around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to like kind of go down the line again. Like, it sounds like you have nailed this, I'll call it a creative outlet, or this project, right? Like, it's in person. You're connecting the community. You have this thing where people are sharing. It's a safe space so people can share whatever. Like the night we both presented, the range of stories was beautiful and wide, right? And it's inviting enough that people feel comfortable to come up on the stage. And it's in a beautiful venue in a local spot. Like,
Yeah.
Basically, I just want to give you your flowers for like nailing every basically possible thing you can for like an event, and you're making content around it for promoting it and things like that. Like it feels like when you hit all those pieces, it almost, like snowballs into this. It's snowball, like it's intentional, of course, but like you're able to continually expand and bring people in. And I just want to say that's really awesome, and not enough people do it. And like and it feels like you're using the skills you have in your professional world, your side quests as well, to make this thing that benefits yourself and others. To bring it back to David Foster Wallace, you're taking other people's experiences into account while you're making this beautiful thing that benefits you and them. Yeah,
thank you so much, and that it really means a lot to hear that, and especially if someone who's like seen the show and been in the show, it goes back to just like hearing this positive feedback, and it's like we're doing something right, and that feels really good to have struck a chord with the community, because that's at the end of the day that what the show is all about, is like creating a space to share creative stories that are true and that are really vulnerable, but also have like shades of being funny or shades of being absurd or just like wild. Like it hits on so many different emotions, and it feels really nice to have found the right recipe. Like we found a recipe that's working, and we are just working but we're always looking to like not perfect it, because perfection is something that can be dangerous, but like looking to enhance it with like a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. It's just like, what else can we do to make it more even more engaging, or even more accessible to the community that's coming to it. So, it's really special outlet, and it's crazy that we've been doing it for 3 years, and it is like, I'm really proud of, what we've created. So.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's really, really special and wonderful. A question about the format. Was there ever a time where you were thinking, or rather, is it intentional that you allow people to present their story in literally whatever way they want to? Because I thought that was like a really unique thing when we were on stage, and the other one that I've been to is like, it kind of is almost leans into the variety show realm, where you can get these different expressions of stories. And I thought that actually adds to the experience in a really unique way. But I could see how, if you were planning this, you're like, well, we need people to do it like this, so it's controlled. So like, was there a lot of what went into like making that decision?
Yeah, I think, we as improvisers, and Andrea is a stand-up comedian and a sketch performer, like as performers ourselves, the three of us in the production team, we recognize that there's different modes of creativity and there's different modes of storytelling. So we didn't want to constrict it to saying like you have to memorize it and you have to, you can't sing, you can't play the piano. Like we wanted it to be really open to whatever, like if some people have sung or played guitar, some people have pulled down the projector and like had a presentation, like, and there's all different ways that people can come up with telling their own personal story. And we wanted to champion those outlets versus constricting them to like a certain way. Because I feel like with creativity, if you're constricting someone, their creativity is going to shrink. You know, like you need to, in my opinion, allow options and to like give them a wide open, a blank canvas of like whatever they want to do, so then they can create in their best way.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I did want to touch on the concept of Ikigai really quick.
Yeah.
I know that that's something that you've turned to. Let me just read the like different things really quick for people who don't know. So Ikigai is it Japanese?
Yes.
It's a Japanese framework for figuring out what you want to do in life effectively. So you try to find the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for.
Yeah.
Right? So it's it's actually like a beautiful, maybe I'll throw it up in the podcast like here. It's a beautiful thing that you can kind of do this little exercise. You can kind of figure out what works for you. So have you done this recently or in the past? And what did you learn?
So for me, my brother Robbie introduced that term to me a couple years ago. And I think from what I remember, it had come up because I was explaining to him like how much I loved officiating weddings and just everything around it, like in terms of like, I feel like it's what the world needs. I feel like I am good at it. I can get paid for it when I'm like working with New York City couples and like, and it was striking all these different aspects of life. And Robbie was like, oh, it sounds like it's your Ikigai. And I was like, oh, what is that? And he's like, look it up. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I really do feel like it hit those 4 buckets. It helps you like sit with what you're doing in your life and be like, okay, is that my job? Is it a side hustle? Is it a creative outlet? Like what is my Ikigai and like, how can I have that, because it is a beautiful thing to have all 4 of those, like the Venn diagram when they all match up, like that's a really unique experience. And, I think for me, like officiating weddings, like hits all those things. And, so it's like, it's nice to know that I have that in like a part of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's cool, Clay. I gotta imagine there's a lot of people who know this concept. Like I know it, and I don't know what my thing is. Like I haven't been able to like take the time and dive in and figure out, pinpoint exactly what it is. I think I'm getting close, but I'm not quite sure. But it's so wonderful, and I feel like such a spectacular feeling. I'm guessing to be like, actually, this thing hits all those beats. Yeah. And as someone who, Laura will be officiating my wedding, I feel very good about the fact that is like your point of like all the things come together. So let's talk about the wedding stuff really quick.
Yeah, sure.
The officiating, because I find that really interesting, and it's not every day that you meet someone, I should say a fellow officiant, because I've done one. Yes. Boom. I've done one. Actually, I funny enough got like in my email 2 days ago, it was like, congrats on being ordained for 2 years.
Yes.
So I like messaged I screenshot it and sent a picture to my friends that I did the ceremony for, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's been so long.
Yeah.
All that aside. What got you into, like, was it, yeah, tell me about what got you into officiating.
Yeah, so super high level. About 7 years ago, one of my best friends, Claire, she and her husband asked me. I remember like it was yesterday. Like I came over to their apartment, and I thought that she was going to ask me to be a bridesmaid because they were about to get married. But then they were like, "Will you officiate our wedding?" And I was like, "Oh my god, of course!" Like, I'd be so honored. But I had never done it before, and I didn't have any. I immediately said yes because it's such an honor.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, another friend was getting married, and she was like, "Oh, Goehrke, can you officiate my wedding?" And then like it just kind of snowballed from there. And so at this point, I've officiated like 10 friends' weddings.
Wow.
And then in 2020, I joined a collective in New York City, an officiant collective that officiates New York City couples' weddings. And so I've done like 40 weddings through New York City. And so I've
Wow.
officiated like over 50 weddings. And it's just like, it just kind of fell into my lap. And the moment it did, it really lit a fire within me of just like a passion of connecting with couples and telling their being able to have the honor to tell their love story on their wedding day to their community and to themselves. And it's like, it's such an honor. Like I just always come back to that word. It's like such an important thing for
Wow.
me. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I have more questions about that, but I'm curious, like, I feel like in so many stories from like celebrities or successful people or whatever, it feels like there's a moment where things just kind of not happened upon them, but like you just said, like it fell into your lap, right? And I'm curious, like, why do you think, this is maybe a more philosophical question than creative question, but we're going to go for it. Why do you think that happens? And like, and also like kudos for leaning in. 'Cause I think there's probably a lot of people who don't lean in when these things arise. Like what are your thoughts on like leaning in and like following momentum, I guess is maybe a better way of putting it.
Yeah. A couple things that pop up for me is like, leaning in, I think is important, and saying yes. It goes back to the improv principle of saying like yes and. It's like, if something comes into your life, just like embracing it and rolling with it versus like, oh, I don't know if I can handle that. It's like say yes and grow from it and see what can happen, because that's where growth happens, is when you take on opportunities. Like for me, I'm thinking of like the law of attraction of like, I don't know, you attract things that are meant to be in your, like you manifest things that are meant to be in your world. And like, I think that maybe officiating was just something that was meant to fall into my sphere. And I was just open to that experience. And then when it really came into my lap because a friend saw the potential in me to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing too. It's like there's other components that are like conspirators that help you along.
Yeah.
It's not just you. It's like a friend or a boss or a family member, like recognizing something within you and being like, hey, I think you'd be great for this. Like, what do you think? And then you say yes.
With the wedding stuff, the officiating, what is your favorite part about it? To you, like what particularly stood out as like, oh, I want to keep doing this, and now I've done 50 of them.
Yeah. To me, a bunch of things pop up, but I love the opportunity of shining a light on individuals, like on individual couples' story, and doing it justice in front of their community, in front of themselves. So it's like, to me, as I shine a light on their love story, I do that by chatting with the couple throughout the several months before the wedding, having one-on-one conversations, asking them a bunch of questions about their relationship and about their past, and then like weaving that in a story from scratch, and making it feel really, making sure that like the fabric of the two people in the relationship are woven throughout the entire ceremony, like every single corner of the ceremony. I want it to feel like it's about them And I just love that opportunity and that challenge to be able to like whip up something that's really meaningful, because at the end of the day, you are a part of someone's wedding day, and that's can be like the most important day of someone's life. And it's a really big opportunity just to be able to, be a part of that. And then of course, performing it day of, like, sharing what I've been working on with the couple, and just having that opportunity is just like, there's nothing like a wedding day. It's just like the feelings of love in the air, and of the support from the community, and it's really special.
Yeah, no, I that's awesome. I love all of that. And so I've been going through this process with you, which has been fantastic. Me and my fiance Kayla, and I wanted to ask you, and now that you're on the podcast, I can about your process. So far, we've had a couple, like the three of us had a conversation, and you asked us both questions together.
Yeah.
We earlier today literally just had a conversation where we had a one-on-one where you asked me about my relationship with her, and you'll have another one-on-one with Kayla. Was this something that like someone, like, was there like an officiating guide that told you to do this and like helped you with these questions, or is this all coming from you, or a mixture of both?
Yeah. So when I first, in terms of like, when I first was asked to officiate several years ago, I reached out to a couple people in my life that I knew who had officiated weddings, just like I now do. And they had given me examples of like the ceremony and just the structure. So I definitely got support in terms of like what a typical structure would feel like around a ceremony. But in terms of the process and around working with the couple, asking the questions, what type of questions that, that I asked, like, a lot of that just came from my own want of like, okay, if I'm going to write this ceremony, what is the best way to get the meat and potatoes to write the ceremony? To me, it's interviewing the couples. And even though I know the couples, if they're buddies of mine, I can share my own experience and my own perspective, but I want to really deep dive with that couple. So I just early on came up with questions that would be helpful for me to ask, to get to elicit like beautiful details of their relationship, so then I can write a ceremony from it.
Yeah.
A lot of it was a mix. So I got some support, but then a lot of it was just me kind of navigating that space and just figuring out what I would need if I wanted to write a good ceremony.
Yeah. To bring it full circle, it sounds like you come up with a good framework for exploring what the couple, what their relationship is, to help you make that story for it, to weave that story and that performance for the day of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it goes back to the exploration of just gathering information, and then when you're writing the ceremony out, which there's so many avenues that you can take in terms of writing a story. And, I think it's just such a creative outlet, because you are, at the end of the day, you're a storyteller, and you're telling, it's similar to Public Victories. You're telling a true story about, instead of it being about you, you're telling a true story about the couple who are getting married, about, their love and their connection and their relationship. So there's so much creativity in terms of storytelling, and exploring what a ceremony can look like.
Yeah. And out of curiosity, do you do any other writing in your life? Like you kept using the word story and storytelling and weaving and bringing these ideas to life in this way. Like, do you write fiction? Do you write nonfiction or any of that kind of stuff, or not at all?
Yeah. I journal when I can. So that's obviously just for me to, like, navigate my own day-to-day and explore things that are going on within, my own world. So I do journal when I can. I go into phases, I'm sure as a lot of people do. It's like journaling a lot and then like, oh, I haven't journaled in months. Like, so I try to make it more of a practice when I can. And then back in the day, I was a reporter for like a small newspaper. So I like wrote, and it goes back to like, I would interview people and then tell stories about people in the town and just their businesses and like their, their goings on. So, yeah, I have different outlets, like writing outlets in my life and in my past, but that is the main source of writing for me right now is officiating and ceremonies.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 more questions.
Yeah, great.
Do you
Bring
like
it on.
as far as let's look a bit into the future because that's always fun. It can be fun. Sometimes it's scary, but hopefully it's fun.
Yeah.
Are there any creative projects that you are even just thinking about? Like maybe there's no work being done, you haven't looked into it at all, but maybe you're like something's like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like maybe I want to try that. Is there anything like that on your horizon?
Yeah, I would say the one that's most clear on the horizon is public victories that we have been talking about. We actually want to flip that into a podcast, and we've been recording a lot of the shows. So the goal is to have it be a podcast where we can have the stories on the pod, but then also perhaps interview the storyteller, hey, how did that feel for you? Or like, tell us more about this part of the story, or like kind of do behind the scenes, and like go into the victory vault of like past stories. And so that's something that we've been exploring. We've been collecting stories for many, many months.
Yeah.
It's just, as you know, it's like kicking off a podcast there's a lot of
It's a process.
It's a process. But right now we're collecting. We've been recording and collecting like a bank of stories. So we're hoping to kick that off at some point soon. So that's probably the biggest thing, and that would be with my production team of Mary Alice and Andrea.
The tripod.
The tripod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so fun. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, we're quickly running out of time. So I like to end every podcast with like 3 actionable tips, words of advice, sayings, musings, whatever, that are actionable for the people listening. So if you have 3 things, what would you tell the audience?
So 3 things that I would say. The first thing that I would say is to look into the concept of the arrival fallacy. Have you heard of this before?
I have, but remind me.
To paraphrase what the arrival fallacy is, it's basically saying like, it's this thought of like, if I can just get the job, or if I can just get that raise, or if I can just get selected for my submission of my piece of writing, like I'll be happy. Once I get there, I'll be happy. And that is a fallacy because the assumption is that happiness comes from an outcome, whereas it basically, the truth is that happiness can come from the journey and the experience like leading up to that outcome.
Yep.
So I would like my brother Paul shared that that concept to me last year, and it really made me think about like, just about thinking about the journey versus the destination. And I know it sounds a little cheesy, but it is a helpful concept to be aware of. So I would say like look into the arrival fallacy and learn more about that. And then second one is just like a quick phrase that is compare and despair. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before.
I've not heard that before.
But it's just like, it sounds like what it is. It's basically saying like, once you start comparing yourself or your own situation to others, you can start despairing and or feeling despair and, questioning like, am I good enough, or is this like things can start to unravel a bit. And so I think it's a good reminder of like, there's so many streams of life that you can take. There's so many different paths that people can go on, and there's not one right or wrong way. So I think like compare and despair is like a common thing that I like to come back to.
Yeah.
When I found myself doing that. And then lastly, I would say creativity is a muscle. So so like the more that you flex it, the more that you work it out, the more like the less sore your body's going to feel when you explore your creativity. And that goes the same for like vulnerability, for instance. Like the more you are vulnerable, because I do feel like vulnerability and creativity are linked, because when you are authentic and open, when you're opening up to like your deeper emotions, that's when like your creativity can really thrive.
Yep.
So it's like, creativity begets creativity, or vulnerability begets vulnerability. So like the more that you are doing that thing, the more it will come your way.
Yeah.
So just reminding yourself that like maybe you haven't been creative in a while and you might feel a little sore from trying to explore being creative, but the more you do it, the better you'll feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are 3 great tips.
Yeah. How to think about that. So
Let's
I'm
see.
glad you gave me a
Yeah.
heads up.
No, that was good. That was really good. Okay, Laura, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was fantastic.
Thank
How do
you
you
for having
feel?
me. I feel great. This is so much fun. Like,
Okay,
this
good.
is such a good little living room chat.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate the time, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
I hope you have a great rest of your day
Thank
as well.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for yet another episode of The Pursuit of Creativity. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you got something from it, be sure to leave a like, a comment, a review, a rating, share it with a friend. Any interaction is incredibly helpful, and I would really appreciate it. For more updates, be sure to subscribe to my Substack newsletter. It's called Small Steps. You'll get a weekly dose of intentional conversation about bettering and improving ourselves and our community. All these things will be linked in the show notes, of course. So once again, my name is Ikey Ajavon. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here. And as usual, stay optimistic. Better days are coming.